HOA Rulebook. It was a peaceful morning in the pristine gated community of Maplewood Estates until Karen saw it. A garden gnome. Not just any garden gnome, but a bright red, slightly chipped, utterly offensive gnome sitting proudly in her neighbor's flower bed. Karen gasped, clutching her pearl necklace as if she'd just witnessed a crime. This was against HOA regulations. Page 14, Section 3, Paragraph B clearly stated, "No lawn ornaments that disrupt the uniform aesthetic of the neighborhood." And Karen, as the self-appointed rule enforcer, could not let this stand. She stormed across the perfectly trimmed grass, ignoring the keep-off sign which she personally had installed last year. She rapped on the door of Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, newcomers clearly unaware of the sanctity of Maplewood standards. Mrs. Thompson answered with a warm smile. "Oh, good morning, Karen." Karen did not return the greeting. She pointed an accusatory finger at the gnome. "Do you see that?" Mrs. Thompson glanced at her garden. "Oh, you mean Mr. Snickers? Cute, right? My daughter picked him out. She loves." "It's against HOA policy," Karen interrupted. "I assume you read the rulebook when you moved in?" Mrs. Thompson's smile faltered. "Well, I skimmed it, but it's just a little gnome. It's not hurting anyone." Karen's eye twitched. "Not hurting anyone? That's what they always say. First it's a gnome, then it's pink flamingos, and next thing you know people are putting up wind chimes. Chaos." "I'm afraid rules are rules," Karen said, folding her arms. "And as a long-standing member of the HOA board, I simply cannot turn a blind eye to this violation." Just then Mr. Thompson appeared at the door, coffee in hand. "What's going on?" Karen squared her shoulders. "Your wife has broken HOA policy with that ghastly garden gnome. I'm going to have to issue a formal complaint." Mr. Thompson took a long, slow sip of coffee. "A complaint? Over a gnome?" "Yes," Karen said firmly. "Unless, of course, you remove it immediately." Mr. Thompson exchanged a look with his wife. Then with a smirk he said, "You know, Karen, I was actually reading through the rulebook last night, and I noticed something interesting." Karen raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" Page 16, Section 4, Paragraph D states that trash cans must not be left visible from the street, he said, motioning toward Karen's house. "And yet, yours is sitting right there." Karen spun around. Sure enough, her garbage bin, one she had forgotten to pull in, was in plain view. Her face turned red. Mrs. Thompson smiled sweetly. "Tell you what, Karen, we'll move our gnome when you move your trash can." Karen clenched her jaw. This was not how things were supposed to go, but she could feel the eyes of the neighborhood watching from behind their windows. She was trapped. "Fine," she snapped, turning on her heel, "but don't think this is over." As she stormed back home, she heard Mrs. Thompson whisper to her husband, "We're getting another gnome."